The other day, I read a statement on Facebook on forgiveness. It goes like this: there is no easy answer to the how of forgiveness, because the process of forgiveness does not come in a tidy, one-size-fits-all. In other words, if any of us were to stand up here and tell you forgiveness is easy, this is how you do it, you should ask some questions. This morning, I would like us to spend a couple of minutes looking at the shortest prayer about forgiveness in the Bible. Jesus hangs on the cross and he prays to his Father, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." And since I dismissed any cliches at the start by that quote that I shared, I would like to share a cliche with you. Forgiveness, Archibald Hart said, is surrendering my right to hurt you for hurting me. Forgiveness is surrendering my right to hurt you because you hurt me. And that is unnatural to us, because we naturally want justice. I read a story. Some fellows were stationed in Korea during the Korean War. While there, they hired a local boy to cook and clean for them. But they were a bunch of jokers. And these guys took advantage of the boy's seeming naive nature. They'd smear Vaseline on the stove handles so that when he turned the stove on in the morning, he'd get grease all over his fingers. They'd put little water buckets over the doors so that he would get soaked every time he would walk into the kitchen. They'd even nail his shoes to the floor during the night. Day after day, this little fella took the brunt of their practical jokes without saying anything. No blame, no self-pity, no temper tantrums. Now finally, the man felt guilty about what they were doing, so they sat down with the young Korean boy and said, "Look, we know these pranks aren't funny anymore, and we're sorry. We're never going to take advantage of you again." It seemed too good to be true for the young boy. "No more sticky on stove?" he asked. "Nope," they said. "No more water on the door?" "Nope," they said. "No more nailed shoes to the floor?" "Never again," they said. "Okay," the boy replied with a smile. "No more spit in the soup." I do share the giggle with you because somehow that is our natural being. Justice. Wrongs need to be righted. And here hangs Jesus on the cross, and he prays, "Father, forgive them." And it makes no sense to me, because he was entitled to revenge and justice, not bound to forgive. And this makes me wonder about the nature of my relationships, especially when I look at the track record that I have. So let us zoom in a little bit on what Jesus prayed on the cross that day and split his prayer in one word at a time. The first word that we have over there is the word Father. You'll need to click me, please. Father. Jesus said Father. Father is a word which indicates an intimate relationship. Father is a word of relationship beyond any other relationship. Nobody prayed to God in the Bible before Jesus showed up by calling him Father. God the Father has an extremely intimate relationship with his Son, the Lord Jesus. Throughout the gospel, we witness this level of deep intimacy between Jesus and his Father, which at a point in time in John 10, verse 30, Jesus says, "I and the Father are one." As I've been reflecting on Jesus' prayer on the cross, I've become increasingly convinced that forgiveness makes most sense only in the context of an intimate relationship with God, the Father. Forgiveness is not only an action or a choice we make in vacuum, but an action and a choice we make for a reason, a deeper relationship with God. Jesus lived his whole life in this intimate relationship with his Father. And he says, you can too. When he was asked, teach us how to pray, Jesus taught us what are the opening words of the Lord's Prayer. Our Father. He says, I have that intimate relationship. You can too. Jesus was resurrected. And he said when Mary Magdalene was there trying to hang on to him, do not hold on to me, for I've not yet ascended to the Father. Go instead to my brothers. Tell them I'm ascending to my Father and your Father. To my God and your God. The intimacy which Jesus experienced is ours right now, right here. And it is in this context that we can talk about forgiveness. When God is not part of the equation, we spit into each other's soups and do not think twice about it. When God is there, the DNA of our relationships is changed forever. Jesus' prayer is a prayer of trust and hope. It's about knowing the one who knows us best, the one who will not allow anything in heaven or hell to separate us from himself, the one who will walk with us all the way till the end of the age. Father, Jesus pray. Father, I pray. Intimate relationship. Forgiveness, as the Bible talks about it, only makes sense in the context of an intimate relationship with God. Father, forgive. Father, forgive. Our natural state in our relationship with God is, if God is there, we are not oriented towards him, we are oriented against him. We turn our backs towards God. That's how we start very often in this life, if not always. We work with the assumption that there is something that is wrong between us and God. That's the result of a number of possibilities. Sometimes it's because of guilt and fear. When we do something wrong, like Adam and Eve, what is our natural tendency? To run to God or to run away from God? Sometimes we have our backs towards God because of our experience. Some of us have not had good role models, and as a result, we struggle to relate to the divine in a healthy way. We rather don't. Sometimes our backs are towards God because of misunderstandings. We perhaps have grown up in an oppressive religious context, which portrayed God to be a tyrant, vengeful, angry. Sometimes it's because of lack of knowledge. Most do not know God at all. So for that reason, when God shows up, Father, that we just described, we go like this. It scares us. Now, whatever the background, we find ourselves consistently with our backs towards God. Along comes Jesus, and throughout his ministry, he keeps proclaiming his words and deeds. Through his words and deeds, peace, he says. Peace. There is peace from God's side. I come back to this Bible verse, John 3:17. Not 16. We know 16. For God so loved the world. The next verse is the one that catches my heart much more. And that one says, anybody remembers it? For God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but to save the world. His words to the woman caught in adultery right there in front of him, where I do not condemn you. All the way to the cross, Jesus communicates with his mouth and hands this one message: peace, you are forgiven. God's not holding anything against you. You are at home with the Father. His forgiveness is yours. Reconciliation, no condemnation. You're okay. Can you hear it? He keeps setting people which were held captives by their erroneous beliefs that God is against them. He sets them free. And he shares with them the good news. Forgiveness is yours. You belong here in an intimate relationship with God where there is no condemnation. Paul Harvey tells the story of a man called Carl Coleman. He was driving to work one morning when he bumped bumpers with another driver. Both cars stopped, and the woman driving the other car got out to check the damage. She was very distraught. It was her fault, she admitted, and hers was a new car, less than 2 days out of a showroom. She dreaded facing her husband. Carl Coleman was sympathetic, but he had to pursue the exchange of insurance details. She reached into the glove compartment to retrieve the documents in an envelope. On the first paper that tumbled out from that envelope were written in a husband's handwriting these words: in case of an accident, remember, honey, it's you I love, not the car. Today, 2,000 years after Jesus uttered the words, Father, forgive, they are as true now as they were then. It is you I love. You are forgiven. Paul catches on to that. And it doesn't only declare you are reconciled, there is peace, you are forgiven, nobody condemns you. He entrusts us that same ministry of reconciliation to be shared with everybody else. He says all of this is from God. He made peace with us through Christ and gave us the task of sharing it with others. He has made us ambassadors of no condemnation in this world. Father, intimate relationship. Forgive, there is peace. That's where we belong. With him now as we shall be in the future. And with his dying breath, Jesus proclaimed that which he came to reveal. The greatest revelation of all time. There is no condemnation because you I love, God says. Even to death, you are forgiven. And now Paul adds, go tell it to the world. Father, Jesus prays, forgive, he says. Father, forgive them. Now, who are the them? Some say it was Pilate. After all, he was in charge and he told others what to do. Some say it was the soldiers. They were the foot soldiers, those who carried out the orders. Some say it was Judas because he betrayed his masters. Others say it was the disciples because they abandoned their master. Some say it was the religious leaders. They plotted and schemed and did not rest until he was dead. And so the list go on. Who are the them that Jesus prays for? Because I have a hunch that every one of us in some way or another played a part in what happened to Jesus that day. Because we also plot amongst ourselves and give orders and abandon and betray him in one way or another. It may not happen the same way in which it happened 2,000 years ago. It may happen in more subtle and familiar ways. In Matthew 25, Jesus shares the parable of the goats and the sheep and describes two religious groups, not religious and non-religious groups. That's us, all of us here, generally speaking. And he says to one group of them, whenever you did those things, feeding the hungry, tending to the sick, caring for those who are in prison, you did it to me, he says. And whenever you did not do it to them, you left me out. Jesus says that whenever we do or do not do these things to other people, by extension, our deeds reflect our attitude towards Him. And so whenever I refuse to share that which I have, whether material, spiritual, or emotional, with those around me, my spouse, my children, my brothers and sisters, I betray my attitude towards God. Whenever I greedily hold on to my own priorities and time and attention rather than give myself to the needy around me, I too crucify Jesus. Whenever I disregard or look down, I pat myself on the back instead of caring, loving, and forgiving others, I am one of them who set up the cross that day. So when Jesus prayed, Father, forgive them, He prayed for me. For truth be told, in my relationship with Him, I do not only let Him down, but so often I go against the very things He stands for. And so think that even to me He says, Father, forgive him or her. Them is us. Them is me. And the forgiveness is mine too. The last words Jesus said in that prayer, for they know not what they do. An expert in forgiveness is Dr. Everett Worthington Jr. He studied forgiveness in more than 1,000 couples. And he described 2 different ways in which we can approach forgiveness. One way, he said, is forgive other people because you will get something out of it. In other words, forgiveness is for getting something out of it. He says, if you forgive people, you are going to live a better life. You are going to feel better about yourself. You are going to improve your relationships. You are going to benefit from forgiving others. Then he said, there is a second way to do it, and that is forgive others because by doing so, you're giving them something. In other words, empathize with their situation so when you set them free, they can live life to the full. Can you see the difference? Forgiveness motivated by getting something, forgiveness motivated by giving something. There is a wee bit of a play on words there as well. And he studied with them intensely, and then he compared them. And this is what he found. The first group was put through brief 1-hour programs. The other one participated in 8-hour-long programs. And they found, quite interestingly, that 1 hour produced little forgiveness. 8 hours produced a lot of forgiveness. Over 5 times, I don't know exactly how they measured, as much forgiveness as 1 hour. And 3 times as much as the self-benefit. After 6 weeks when the program ended, the level of forgiveness in the forgiving group has dropped to half as much as the ones who were submitted to 1 hour. In the empathy group, the level of forgiveness stayed very high. These were the benefits that people got as a result of giving forgiveness to others. So I ask you, which one is better? Forgive others because you get something out of it, or forgive others because you can give them something? Well, statistics show us that giving others is better. And here I catch myself out again. Didn't I say at the beginning that there is no easy answer to the how of forgiveness? Because forgiveness is a very complex thing. And I've just told you that there are ways, there are formulas over there. Foolish contradiction. The reality is this: many times we have no idea what we are doing when it comes to forgiveness. We're muddling our way through. We try this, We tried that. We failed here. We failed there. However, according to Jesus' prayer on the cross, while we muddle on, he says, forgive them, even though they have no idea what they are doing. So how about forgiveness this morning? According to Jesus' prayer on the cross, while we muddle on, there are some things that matter. Number one, forgiveness is most powerful within the confines of an intimate relationship with God. That place where I receive unconditional love and acceptance, and where I am enabled to extend that privilege to those who do not deserve it. I am loved, and for that reason, I can extend forgiveness. When I experience this intimate relationship with God, I'm safe and at peace. And when that happens, I'm not going to ask like Peter, how many times must I forgive? Because I'm loved and I'm okay. I do not take things personally. When I experience that intimate relationship with God, I will not repay evil for evil. I will not spit in anybody's soup, as it were. I will not retaliate with insults when people insult me. Instead, I shall pay them back with a blessing, because that is what God, the one I am in an intimate relationship with, has called me to do, and He will bless me for it. That's the first thing. The second thing, forgiving. Knowing that I am not condemned by God, I shall become an ambassador for this message. I shall go out there and give forgiveness as freely as I have received it. I'm a child of God on a mission to the world. I read the story of a dispute which had grown into a lawsuit between two farmers as to just where the line between them was and where the fence should be. Finally, one of the farmers sold out and the purchaser moved in. Soon he met Farmer Smith, who was agitated and said to his new neighbor, "They tell me you have bought this farm, and I just to inform you that you have bought a lawsuit." The new farmer asked him to explain. And he said, "Well, the fence being located where it is cheats me out of 2 feet of my land." Then said the newcomer kindly, "We will move it back 4 feet." "No," said Farmer Smith, "that is more than I ask." "But," said the new neighbor, "I'd rather have peace with my neighbors than a few feet of earth." Then said Farmer Smith very quietly, "If that is the way you feel, the fence stays just where it is and the lawsuit is off." No condemnation. And because nobody chases me and points a finger at me, I can move the fence back in the advantage of the other. Because I'm called to be an ambassador for peace. Father, forgive them. I realize that I'm one of the culprits Jesus graciously prayed for. I'm the one that Jesus offered forgiveness to while on the cross. And for that reason, I may be able to empathize with my brother and my sister who wronged me. I may be able to make allowance for other people's faults and forgive anyone who offends me. For when all is said and done, aren't we all in the same boat? Them is us. Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they do. I remain committed to extend forgiveness for giving's sake to all who muddle their way through, and will continue to pray together with you and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. So today, as we partake from the bread and the wine, I commend to you 4 words. Father, forgive them while they do not know what they are doing.